Hey, this is DJ, this is Kaz, we're Buried Above Ground, and this is Speak of the Devil podcast.
From Podcastville. Today is April 19th, 2020, week 6, since we've been doing coronavirus pandemic podcast. So here we go. So we are going to launch into some music news. And by the way, being for the 419 is actually the 419 celebration in Toledo, if you are in T-Town. So there you go. But anyway, let's get back into it. Music news. If there was any music news, there really isn't. But there is a few funny things that are not funny, but it's just intriguing things that are going on in music. On Twitter right now, there's among hard rock and metal bands, there's a hashtag going around called #Lars was right. Now, what that refers to is, the 2000 era, case where Metallica was the sole band to actually take Napster to court over the fact that a demo of I Disappear that was going to be in the Mission Impossible 2 movie got leaked on Napster before they were done, with their studio version. It was an unedited, just a rough cut, like a demo. And as any band out there would know, you don't want a rough demo of, what will be your final product to be a representation of what the song is. It's a bad look or feel because things aren't completely done. It's a pre-production kind of effort. So, but not only that, you just don't want your stuff getting out there for free. And they were at the forefront of that and got so much hate. And, again, I always refer to other people's YouTube videos and podcasts and everything. But when James Hetfield was on the Joe Rogan podcast, and he barely ever does long in-depth interviews, James Hetfield, but a few years ago, when Hardwired to Self-Destruct came out, he did a podcast on there, and they talked about Napster. And he had said at the time that, and he didn't name any names, but he said there were other artists, rappers, metal people, there was a lot of people in the community at the time that totally agreed with what they were doing. But when they reached out to say, well, join us in this court thing, they were like, oh no, we can't do that. It'll ruin our sales. It'll ruin my record and all this stuff. And it was so short-sighted because in the end, nobody has any sales. You make literally less than a penny on the dollar of a Spotify stream or whatever. You got to sell 60,000 million streams and you get $2,000 or something. It's ridiculous the way the model is right now. So right now, #Lars was right is trending on Twitter for the hard rock and metal community. Not just because of that, because of what I had mentioned on the last couple of podcasts before, is now every band, it doesn't matter what genre you're in, forget metal or hard rock or whatever, every band right now and musical act really makes their money on touring. They don't make it on record sales. Like I said, Spotify pays you nothing to have your music out there. So all your creative efforts, you're not getting paid for that. What you're getting paid for and making money for is when you actually go out and tour and sell merchandise. And like I said on the last couple of podcasts, I understand that people are still trying to sell their merchandise, but it's an impulse buy. It's something that you buy when you go to the live concert experience and then you're really hooked in and you want some memorabilia to remember the experience you had. There is no experience right now, And until there is a vaccine truly for coronavirus and the times that we're living in right now, there is not going to be any mass gatherings and packing of 60, 70,000 people. And no, that's not going to happen. I mean, maybe there'll be some people that, or some states or whatever that allow it, and maybe there'll be some dummies that do it. But I think you're going to have maybe at least half of society saying, no, we're not going to do that. We're still going to abide by some sort of social distancing guidelines, even once the restraints are lifted and we can technically be back to normal. But there will be no normal. But the hashtag Lars was right speaks all to this, is that, especially for like touring bands and everything, this could be the end for tons of bands. I'm sure there's tons of bands that are not tons, but there's probably a couple bands that just got recently signed to Warner Brothers or some huge record label, and they were just gonna get a push, man. They were gonna be mainstream right now. And what are they doing right now? They're sitting at home doing nothing, just like I'm doing, sitting here making a podcast. And that's not their fault, but it's just a point that when you give away all this stuff for free, like, it's not necessarily giving it away for free. I pay pennies on the dollar for a stream like Spotify does now, legally, which I've heard is basically negotiated, by the record labels. Like, the record labels still get a good cut of it and then still trickle down to the artist. It's a messed up thing, but because the idea was always that people were going to be able to tour. But I mean, in the last 5-10 years, there have been so many mega tours. There's a cruise tour, there's a mega tour, there's a super gigantic 3-day tour that's going to happen 7 times this year. It's like, how many of these mega tours, and it's in every genre, hard rock, blues, pop, anything you can think of, it's been happening. So, but now, gone, done. Not until, there's a vaccine. And even when there's a vaccine, are people going to take it? Is it going to be readily available? I mean, we're talking devastation to the live environment that's going to basically go for at least a year or 2. I mean, they're already talking recommendations about 2022 being the actual finally time where things go back to the way they were about 4 or 5 months ago. 2 more years until we get back to that. And for all the musicians and and bands that are out there, this is the death knell for tons of bands out there. They, everybody. I feel bad for a lot of like small, like major bands are going to survive. Metallica is going to survive, but people that are really small, that that maybe have given up their day jobs to do this or whatever, they're going to have to go back. A lot of dreams are going to be crushed and never realized, kind of thing. And it's just sad for not just metal and hard rock, for all genres, because, digital distribution, in the last 10, 20 years has destroyed record sales. And the coronavirus has now just destroyed live performances for at least the next 2 years. Within maybe you get some, small crowds and you have distancing, but that is not what anybody wants or is used to. You're used to just stacked people on top of each other enjoying this crazy show, but in light of safety we can't do that. So as a result of that, I think in the beginning, Ticketmaster was getting some heat because at first they were not giving refunds, but now they actually are giving refunds starting May 1st. So basically the new statement is starting May 1st, if you had a ticket to basically anything, in the future from that point on, you'll have 30 days from when that event was supposed to happen to get a full refund or a credit towards the rescheduling of the show. So they realized that they had to do that, and just like I mentioned last time, GameStop trying to stay open and buckling under pressure, Ticketmaster has now buckled under the pressure and done the right thing and said, okay, we're going to give everybody refunds. It's just what you have to do. So, and I mean, and then I guess the last thing, there is no last thing, I guess I already addressed it, is when will we return to live events in full? like full, mayhem, 60, 70,000 people in some outdoor event. Probably not, unless there's a vaccine, probably not until about 2022. If there's a vaccine in a year from now, or maybe, but who knows who's going to take even if there is a vaccine, is everybody going to take it? It's going to be available, so the music industry is going to be pushed back at least 2 years. And in an industry that is already just hanging on by a thread by live performances sustaining the income. I mean, you've just cut the head off the snake for a lot of bands and artists. So it sucks. I mean, it's no fault of anybody's, but that's the reality of the situation. Okay, so now we move on to video games. Just give you a couple quick updates on some cool PSVR stuff that I've been playing. I've been trying to stay away from the motion sick games. It's hard to do. It seems like when you really get to the other side of it and try to do like a deep dive, you're kind of left to the games that really are motion sensitive. But a couple games, one game that is not, and is just amazing, that I want to highlight is Archangel. It's like this futuristic mech game where all you do is just control the arms, and you're on a track, a slow track that slowly moves, and you're just sitting there. So I've played that and have had zero motion sickness, and it's beautiful. It's one of the best games, and priced likewise. I mean, it's one of the more expensive PSVR games at $30, but it's worth it. And like all the hype that I heard is real on that. And then one of the biggest games that's out there that when I've had to turn the comfort settings on, but once you kind of get used to it and really just kind of let yourself immerse yourself, it's not too crazy. But Blood and Truth is very cool. It's like a Guy Ritchie, European UK action movie that you're in with like interrogations and everything. The only thing that I've noticed with the PSVR that like even when you're standing still that can give you like some weird motion sickness is if you're sitting at a table just like this looking at a table in VR, all of a sudden it'll just like keep moving back and forth like just randomly in your vision, and that can just play with your eyes and give you motion sickness just from that. It's silly. So you got to be in motion sometimes, or if you're in a sitting situation, sometimes just kind of look around to make sure you're not focusing like on a table or something that might move and get you sick or something. But anyway, those are Archangel and Blood and Truth on PSVR. Highly recommended from me. And as we are moving towards the end of the year, they have announced that PS5 will probably be around $500 to $550, depending on what SKUs they have and what features they have. And, not surprisingly, they're saying there's going to be shortages. There's always shortages when these consoles come out. They do it on purpose most of the time to try to drove up the demand. Although, obviously, this year, there probably is some real concerns about manufacturing and all that kind of stuff if they can actually get these systems out in time. So, but the rumor is 500, 550, and there is going to be a new PSVR headset for that. I don't know, maybe it'll be there'll be a new PSVR experience. Whether that headset works or not, who knows? Maybe it will. Maybe they'll need to have some kind of crazy upgrade. But that would be interesting if you could actually use that same headset. So I will say the last thing on video games, a Sega Saturn classic brought back is Panzer Dragoon Remake on Nintendo Switch with overhauled graphics, overhauled controls if you really want them. Although I do like the old school controls, which are I don't know, like there is no way to change the difficulty, at least as far as I can tell. So you just got to play it. And it is, I never remembered Panzer Dragoon being a button masher, but like on the Chapter 4 boss, I mean, my thumb, I'm sitting there holding the controller or the system sideways, hitting it with my finger like I'm playing an arcade or something. I mean, it was always kind of an arcade-based kind of thing, kind of almost like Space Harrier to the next level. But man, even on the Saturn, I don't remember mashing the buttons that hard. I mean, it's been a long time, and I don't have that in my collection for Saturn games. But man, very cool. You know, it is hard. I think I've heard other reviews like it's the Saturn port, faults and all. And I guess they are going to do Panzer Dragoon Y, the second one, and even Orta, the Xbox original one, and remake those as well, which would, I mean, totally very welcome. I love this remake and will happily buy both of those games. Just, man, maybe put a difficulty setting on it so my thumb doesn't have to fall off from trying to beat a level, you know? But still cool nonetheless. So that's it for all that, and let's wrap up with wrestling news. Oh my gosh. You know, McMahon, he's got his ways, and he had the governor of Florida reverse his decision and claim that WWE is an essential business. So there you go. What more do you need to know about the legitimacy of me talking about wrestling in this podcast to know that the governor of Florida considers wrestling an essential business? Which we all know is bullshit, but whatever. But they are still operating as an essential business, taping at the Performance Center with no audience and just, you know, limited cast members and all that kind of stuff. Even though they've had somebody test positive a few weeks ago at the WrestleMania taping for the Rona. But they're more worried about the moolah than the Rona. So wrestling will continue, but not as you know, I mean, you know, there's a lot of other, you know, Disney's laid off a lot of people, like, you don't need staff if there's nobody showing up to live events. So, I mean, WWE has probably laid off at least about a quarter, if not a third of, I wouldn't say non-essential wrestlers that are just kind of on the fringe that, you know, haven't really been producing. I guess some of the biggest were Luke Gallows, you know, him, a couple others, you know, that, you know, I mean, they were involved with the Boneyard match and now they're gone. But, you know, the OC was not that big of a deal. You know, they weren't really producing that much. You got Festus, and he's gone now. So, bye, Festus. You know, it was a lame gimmick. You can put all the Legion of Doom, you know, makeup on you want, but he's still Festus. So, some people like that are gone. They're keeping the main guys and all that. So, the tapings will continue. Not only the tapings, I think they're actually continuing live. So, you know, just to kind of give people something to watch, whatever. You know, McMahon's got a lot of money and a lot of influence, so it just worked out his way for now. So we'll see how that all goes. And we will end with wrestling news on such a sad note. But I have seen him announce people is Howard Finkel, the Fink, one of the first WWE not announcer, but ring, I don't know what he was, but announcer, you know, the guy that intros everybody to the matches or whatever. And he just recently passed away. I had seen him when, like, I don't know, when the network first launched. He was on Legends House and like 5-10 years ago, and he had gained an incredible amount of weight, and I'm sure that didn't help, just like anybody, if you know with your health conditions. But anyway, Howard Finkel was the voice of winning a championship in the 80s and 90s and even the early 2000s. I mean, it could send, you know, chills down your spine in a good way. Like if you had won, like it was. I would probably say for a lot of wrestlers, not only winning your championship match for the first time would be like the really important, but having Howard Finkel announce you as the new whatever champion you were at the time. I mean, the way he would say, "New Intercontinental Champion!" Oh man, it just sent, it was, goosebumps, So rest in peace to Howard Finkel, the Fink, who I was able to see at WrestleMania 18, who announced the new undisputed champion, Triple H. Doesn't get any better than that, except he could do it with a full voice, and I'm doing it in a falsetto, but there you go. So that is it for the 19th of April. Here we, 6th week of quarantine. We shall see how this continues. We just got to stay safe. We're doing good. And we'll see you on the next Speak of the Devil podcast.